My pleasure to introduce Michael Lewrick. Michael advises companies on innovation strategies and complex business challenges. He's an international speaker, teaches design thinking, life design, business ecosystem design as a visiting professor at various universities. Recognized as a lead author and thought leader internationally with his award-winning bestsellers, The Design Thinking Playbook, The Design Thinking Toolbox, and his latest, The Design Thinking Life Playbook. Here it is. This is a great book. I highly recommend all three of these. I have just been loving this latest one. It's really wonderful. They're published by Wiley. They're full color, really tremendous authorship. Michael holds the position of Head Innovation Labs at Deloitte, Switzerland. His expertise centers on development of go-to-market concepts, growth strategies and implementation, investment steering, business model innovations, and building business ecosystems. His research interests focus on design thinking, business ecosystem design, innovation management, in cooperation with Stanford University and various European universities. Michael, welcome to this conference. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. I think you need to unmute, sir.
Hello, everyone. So now I think you're ready to go. I have to share my screen. That's probably a good idea. And then get the presentation started so that we have like the same view and everything. So let's go for it. All right. Perfect. So you can hear me?
Yes, sure can.
Okay, yeah, thanks for having me today. So Tim, it was a really nice introduction about your name. So I'm really lucky. There's only one Mike Lewrick in this world so far. So I'm, sometimes I thought about my last name. Now it's really hard to pronounce, especially in German. But if you're becoming a book author, and this is so easy because people type it in, and there's only one book with one name and it's related. So sometimes, things have also a positive side. And as you mentioned before, Design Thinking Life is all about reframing, looking into positive elements. So I'm glad that you enjoyed the Design Thinking Life playbook as well. Excellent. Perfect. So we spent now around 45 minutes together. So it would be great, we have also some time in the end of my presentation to answer a couple of questions. So please, there's a chat function and put the questions in. So maybe Tim will capture all these things and we have a small discussion about this topic. Also like to invite you to get connected already. There's a LinkedIn kind of a QR code here on the front page and also type it in. So maybe you like to reach out individually after this conference and we can have a chat. Because usually when we have physical conferences, that's the nicest part. You have a coffee break, you come together, you have a glass of wine, you have a beer and you chat about things. And nowadays, with all these webinars and everything happening online, it's quite hard to reconnect. And so hopefully we will have all the interactions after my presentation. So thank you very much. So when it comes to myself, Tim did already an awesome presentation about my person. So what I have to add, there are 2 books out about design thinking. That's also my topic today, how we can use design thinking in projects and project management. So these 2 books basically available in many languages. So the Design Thinking Playbook is translated in over 15 languages. The Design Thinking Toolbox just was released 1 year ago. We get a Russian version, we get a Japanese version, a Chinese version as well. So at the moment you can get it in German, English, French, and Italian. And I hope over the time of this year, we get all these other books translated. So I like to start in asking you why design thinking, and many of you might have heard about design thinking because it's kind of also a buzzword, that people thinking, well, this is kind of fancy, it's creative, it's innovative. So design thinking became one of the topics many people are talking about, but sometimes you have a little bit kind of a weird feeling about it because we really don't know what it's all about, because from the outside perspective, what we see, people have these post-its, they have these funny workshops and they're playing like with different materials to build something, you know, and sometimes that even weird material to prototype, and finally coming up with new solutions, you know. But the question is really, why design thinking? And I was displaying a little bit kind of the chaotic situation here on the left side, and although Tim mentioned his introduction speech, we're living in kind of a complex time with a lot of wicked problems. And in the beginning, when we look into like complexity, it's not easy to solve. And design thinking usually is applied for wicked problems, not something easy to solve. So if I have now the idea, I'm located here in Zurich, you know, I'm 10 minutes away from the central station, and my problem is to go to the central station where I'm living. It's quite easy because, you know, there are probably two options. I take a taxi, I take the bus, you know, and I will arrive in 10 minutes. So easy decision. But for the more complex problems, no, we can not have kind of this straightforward answers and solutions ready to go. So we really have to find a way to discover the problem space. And I wrote it here on the left side. So discover and having kind of this unsecurity in the beginning is one of the main parts design thinking is all about. We looking into the problem, trying to find out the appropriate problem. And when Tim was mentioning the design thinking life playbook, immediately came to my mind, yes, you know, our life is one of the most complex, not problems, but challenges to solve. And so the design thinking mindset really helped also on the private side to come up with good solution and good paths for your entire journey you have in your career or your personal life. So basically, design thinking, very chaotic in the beginning. We like to understand the basic problem, and then over the process, we ideate, we prototype, and at the end of the day, you have a good solution and much more clarity about what it's all about. So basically, the question is now, so you are not a designer, and why should you now start applying design thinking in your project work? You know, this is kind of the overall questions. And the question is raised very often. And one of the answers I usually have is a statement from Japan about the beginner's mind. And what they're saying is basically is the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, and in the expert's mind, there are only few. So basically what it says, you know, if you have no clue about something and we start to explore and we go a little bit deeper, we find better solutions, better market opportunities, better innovation. And why we have like this lady with this little kid here on this picture, because when you remember when you were 4 years old, or maybe you have kids in this age, there's one thing they do all the time. They ask questions. They ask why, they ask how, where, who, where. They ask all these questions because they have no clue about this world. So they try to figure out by asking. At the same time, they do a lot of experiments. They're prototyping. So they have their hands on the fire, you know, and they get burned. They're not doing it the second time. They're playing outside, you know, experiencing a little bit our environment. And finally, they learn, you know. And this is actually one of the great habits, you know, every human being has to explore something and to find new solution. Unfortunately, over our education, going to school, high school, going into university, we're really losing this kind of ability to explore, because usually when you write a test in school, there's like only a right answer. And if it's not right, you know, you're not getting the points. So what's happening, you're learning like concepts, you're learning it kind of out of books, but you never experience something to learn and come up with different solutions. And for some things, it's totally right to do so. It's like in math, you know, and physics, totally agree. You have to learn it by heart, you know, and basically know how it works. But in many other areas, you know, we have to explore to come up with better solutions in the end. So what is design thinking? As mentioned before, it's kind of a mindset. So we have the mindset of prototyping, finding like experiences out of trial and error. At the other hand, we have the design thinking process, and usually it has like 6 kind of steps. It really starts with understand, observe, defining a point of view, ideate, prototype, test the prototypes, and also kind of reflect, what did we do over the period of time. And usually it's kind of a micro process. So you do kind of iteration and you start to observe, you build something, you test it, you get the feedback, you have more insights, you understand again, you define a point of view, and so on. So basically over the time you iterate and iterate, and with all the feedback collected, you get better insights and you can build something with more purpose and actually closer to the customer user needs. On the other hand, you have a lot of tools, design thinking tools, and most of them are related also to other techniques we use in innovation management, we use in project management. But this kind of tool set, it's great because it has kind of 250 different approaches how you can encourage to have people more innovative, tools to select ideas, tools to come up with like really crazy prototypes, like a dark horse prototype. It's really kind of a tool, really strive to innovate and to build something which is totally out of mind. And all these things together helps lately to create something new, to come up with new innovations. So basically design thinking is a mindset, is a process, and you have a lot of tools you can apply during the design thinking process, while you're innovating, while you're exploring, while you come up with new solutions, while you're testing ideas you always had. So basically, this is what it's all about. And it's quite important, especially when it comes to project management and design thinking, to have kind of a cluster where everything is happening. So if someone's asking me, what's the difference between design thinking and Agile? So a lot of people are confused and saying, that's the same thing. And I have a lot of clients and companies who say, we have this great Agile program and everyone is working now Agile. And so they're saying, and it's already including the design thinking mindset and everything. So I'm really asking them, what have you taught people about Agile and developing something? Because for me, Agile is developing something fast, testing it and bringing it to the market. But usually you're not focusing so much on discovering the problem space. So it's like building something. And then basically I observe how these companies interacting in the teams, and their teams, they do like for 2 years iterations. They iterate, but they never come to the point to bring anything to the market, and they not even know why they iterating and why they're building something up, because they never have understood the problem space. So what we do at the moment at really large companies like large bank, insurance companies, pharma companies, we add design thinking as additional discipline and saying, without understanding design thinking, understanding the problem space, you will be not very good off in creating something Agile. And finally, build something cheap, everything related to lean, building something with limited amount of resources comes afterwards, because after you have developed something, you maybe like to scale it, you like to find like ways of producing something more lean, and then the lean mindset comes there as well. But for me, it's quite important, to distinct a little bit between design thinking, Agile, and lean, and really putting design thinking as a front pillar, to create something that you have something with purpose, to be Agile, and basically to apply the lean methodology to scale in the end. So this is kind of my categories also for this presentation. So when it comes now to building up these design thinking capabilities, I structure this now in 4 quadrants. So make it a little bit simpler, and you have like on the right corner, design thinking as a user-centric mindset. This is basically really the starting points, putting the user and human beings in the center of all activities, observe how they interact, what kind of pains and gains they have, and also what kind of jobs to be done is related to a specific user group. And we really try to figure out, what are the deeper needs to build something with purpose. On the other hand, on kind of individual development and strategic focus, you have design thinking as a competitive strategy. So using the design thinking mindset to build up a strategy became really famous over the last 5 to 6 years. So companies realized that the top-down approach of creating a strategy is fine, but usually it's based on already known assumptions. So we looking into the market size, we're looking into how much product we sold last year, we're looking into cross-selling products, defining the strategy, but we never, or in rare cases, we're looking into like kind of a bottom-up approach, designing first a new product and then asking ourselves, how does it fit to the strategy? And I'm experimenting now for the last years with many companies. They do now both. They have like the regular strategic planning process, coming up with a competitive strategy. At the same time, they're using the design thinking mindset and building up something, and then both things come together and you have the validation from like a market perspective as a strategy. At the same time, you have kind of the validation with a user and potential customer to come up with new solution. And especially when it comes to a topic Tim mentioned as well, but I'm doing a lot of research at the moment, when it comes to the design and the creation of business ecosystem. It's really important that it's user focused, it's complex, and at the same time, you're creating something totally new. So everything you know already about the market, about the size, and everything related to top down might not work in creating this new ecosystem. On the other hand, as mentioned before, of course, you have the design thinking toolbox, all these kind of techniques you're using while you're running through the process. And of course, you can lift up design thinking as a culture and saying, this is kind of the mindset we like to apply. And when we look at a lot of technology companies, they have the design thinking mindset as part of their value. So Amazon, Google, Spotify, Alibaba, when you just review, what are the values, you see, customer first, we do prototypes, we are user-centric. You see a lot of elements from the design thinking part are part of the daily business, and they're really strict about applying these things. So for example, if you have talks with Amazon, they have 10 principles and saying, whatever we do, these 10 principles are part of our mindset, how we approach as partners, and they're really strict about also applying this kind of mindset in a way that there's no kind of doubt that this is the right thing to do. On the right side, I have a couple of other terms like team of team culture. I will also speak a little bit about team of teams, because I think it's quite important nowadays to scale within your organization a mindset like design thinking. So I will also give kind of the overview how the team of team approach is working. So finally, the design thinking definition, is probably best described as a mindset. And the mindset has also evolved and has a lot of steps into different directions over the last years, because in my books, I'm always using kind of new elements and I added to what is already stated here. So for example, accepting complexity, because a lot of things, especially in the digital space, are really complex nowadays, and different systems have to work together. Different ecosystem partners have to collaborate to come up with a unique and the best value proposition. So complexity is something we really have to deal with, and we have to accept it. It's complex and we have to break it down. And one of my really points here is it's not only design thinking then, it's also a combination about design thinking and system thinking to create like complex ecosystems with new value proposition. But just focusing here on the mindset, as I stated, show don't tell. It's one of the paradigms behind, it's really, you build something, you show it to other people, you get feedback, and you're not just speak about it, you're not just having a PowerPoint presentation, it's really, you make it tangible and you interact with the users about a potential product. Of course, you focus on the human values. It's quite important that we have really human interaction. And now for the last 12 months, I'm sitting more or less here in my office, I can't interact with people and showing them. And we can do a lot of things in the digital space when it comes to design thinking and working together. But on the other hand, it's really different if you have like a real interaction in the real setting, because you get different kind of feelings from the other person you're interviewing, you're interacting with. You see like how the impressions in the face are coming along. And usually what I really like about testing things in the real environment is the good talks are always after the official part. So you have like the session about showing someone any kind of prototype, you get the feedback, so like a half-hour session, then you walk out of the building and people start to talk about things, because it's not like kind of this pressure to have this like half hour to interacting. It's more like, now we are free and we have good talks, and get most of the insights after the official part, after the official part of interviewing, after the official part of showing any kind of prototype. Then of course, clarity, really, that's clear what we present and what is the intention behind. Experimentation, as I mentioned before, we build something, we get the feedback, we improve our prototypes, and of course, we have to know where we're standing in the process. And sometimes people say it's a design thinking process, so it's like input and output. So you put your problem statement in the beginning, and the output is the final solution. The process is not meant to be a process in a kind of process definition. It's more like kind of a reference model, so that we know where we're standing in the process, because you have a lot of different teams working at the same time. And sometimes I have even now teams connecting big data analytics, so data scientists and people from the design thinking space working together. And for me, it's more like where we are in the process. We are in a phase of exploring, of observing, we're building something, we're testing, we're getting feedback, we're improving. So for me, it's more like, look, we have these 6 stages. Right now we define it together as a point of view, and everyone knows that we are on the same page and what to deliver. Then, of course, action and radical collaboration. I think that's quite important. Usually we not plan ahead so much. We try to come together, collaborate radically and build something. And this is also quite new for people. And sometimes I have at universities like 1-week sessions about design thinking, and I'm not looking into the theory and not present anything on slides. We're just applying design thinking to solve a problem, and then basically we have 20, 30, 40 students in one room, they split up into groups and they start to collaborate radically. And after the 5 days, they have awesome solutions. Sometimes there are even patents going out, maybe, and also kind of people have the idea we have to create our own startups. So in a short time, you come together, you have kind of a facilitation, where you stand in the process, you have the same mindset, and you're building something in no time, and it's actually amazing what you can really achieve in 1 week, just having different people working on one problem statement. So basically, to wrap it up a little bit about design thinking agile. So design thinking is really about finding the right problem, and agile is really an approach to solving the problem. So basically these things coming together, and I don't like to spend too much time on this presentation because I have displayed on a nice framework I have developed over the last years. It calls the problem to growth and scale framework. And as you can see nicely now on the left part, like number 1 is find the appropriate problem. So this is the design thinking part. We're going into like the double diamond, we're looking at the problem space, we're looking into the solution space, and finally we're coming up with a problem solution fit. And basically this is a starting point, like a final prototype, to build a minimum viable product. And the minimum viable products then the next step out of final product, final prototype, because you're validating different things. You have real customers, you're asking for the willingness to pay, you measure your innovation results, and innovation accounting becomes really kind of a key concept of the MVP. And later on, you have the problem market fit. And basically a lot of people think, then it's already done. We have the MVP, we launch it to the market, and we're ready to go. But nowadays, it's kind of the way how we structure products and coming together, come out with a new value proposition is also very important. So a new concept, and actually my next book is all about the new concept, is the minimum viable ecosystem. So basically, usually now in this complex world with kind of these interaction between different players, you're trying to come up with an ecosystem approach to bring your value proposition to the market. And what does it mean? Yeah, you have to find one or many MVPs, but now you like to really create some market buzz and bring it to the clients and even scale it later on and create exponential growth. So usually single companies now are not able to solve these complex problems. So for example, having an insurance company, one of my clients, and they really like to have the next thing about advising companies, for live events. And live events are not just, buying a house and need kind of a mortgage from my bank. So many other things are happening, right? So you're coming out of school, you get into a marriage, your first kid is coming along, you're building this house, you need a bigger house, and many other life events. And so basically, it's not just the financial part, you also have to solve other problems. So you have 3 kids, so maybe you need kind of the best vehicle for transportation. Or maybe you out of university, you need like a first place to live, or you need kind of insurance products, for your first kind of apartment. So there are many things coming together. And what I'm trying to say is that nowadays we coming up with this idea of creating value propositions. We have to bring different actors together to deliver really kind of a unique experience, because in our traditional thinking, companies have not the right capabilities to bring these things to the market. So the concept of building up ecosystems and doing this always in a kind of lean and agile way brings us to the concept of the minimum viable ecosystem. And then finally, of course, we try to scale, and everything related to scaling up is another mindset, because a lot of things happening there as well to create exponential growth. And with a good design ecosystem, it's much more easy to scale your product afterwards, because you know exactly how to distribute innovation, sales, customer action within the ecosystem, and build up kind of a larger system. You can realize your market opportunities. So this is just a problem to scale and growth framework. And now the question was how to leverage design thinking in projects, And first thing, and the good news is, you can learn design thinking behavior. It can be trained, And I was just displaying here a methodology from Stanford University. It's called the hunting and transport philosophy. So basically you have a starting point displayed here on A, and basically you have kind of a objective, like a big bold objective, a strategy where you like to go, it's B. And what's happening usually while looking into the problem space and the solution space with design thinking, a lot of things changing, and sometimes also the direction, what is the outcome of everything. And as you see it here on the display, you have the second B, and basically you're ending up with a totally different product or solution in the end. And this is the interesting part, that you're applying the beginner's mindset, as mentioned before, the small kid asking all these why and how questions. And finally, over the period of iterations, feedback, looking into what is really of value for the final client, you're coming up with a new solution. And while we're applying the hunting and transport philosophy, there are a couple of things quite important. And I just displayed them here. So I have a purpose, working in these multi-capability teams, like the teams of teams approach. Also be patient with the failure, and of course declare your behavior. So to tell people where you are, not only in the design thinking process where we're standing, but also declare your behavior about you on the mode of hunting or bringing it back and having feedback and reinventing and redesign. So this is quite important to really have the balance between the two things, and don't confuse, because it's quite important what we're doing at the moment. We're building, we're presenting, or we reinventing, we redesign what we have learned out of the feedback, interacting with potential clients. And then finally, and this is also something, it's really important, sometimes totally underestimated, and people leave it out, deliver results. It's not like we do it just for fun, that we build nice prototypes and having like these great workshops and all these sticky notes on the walls. It's also about delivering something, and bring it home is one of the research areas I was involved for a long time, because I was always engaged in working with large companies. I was observing how really teams created nice final prototypes, they created nice MVPs, but then when it comes to realization and really putting it into the market and making it big, there was a lack of capability. So design thinking is not only creating a prototype, a final prototype, it's also about strategy of implementing and get it to the ground. So how to bring it home, delivering results, very important in design thinking. So when it comes now a little bit about this evolution of teams, and probably look at the three diagrams I put on this slide. Most of you probably somewhere in the middle. Some of the companies are still into this traditional command structure. You have like the CEO, you have the business unit, and it's kind of this pyramid, and everything is organized in this functional way. Many companies now introducing Agile, so they have more kind of centralized and also decentralized units, but still usually we operating in our silos, and results are really measured on the year-end outcomes, and the target setting is a little bit the same. And another concept, and this is something I'm collaborating now with many companies, they really like to go into a team of teams approach. And what does it mean? You really try to connect all the dots, you have people working on multi-projects at the same time, and you also measure the success of these projects during the year. So it's not like you have defined your objectives in the beginning of the year and you have your final review. It's more like you contribute to a project with your best skills, and you get kind of your feedback based on what you did. At the same time, we're trying to connect like the best experts within a company. So it's not just like your department, your silo. We're trying to collaborate across all these silos, and people and teams are really have their own responsibility. And this is quite important. They know basically the big board objectives, they knowing the strategy, but within the team, they decide, the speed, the frequency, how they operate, all the tactics are defined by the team, and finally they contribute, to something bigger. And the good thing about this concept, it's all related to a ball of trust, because then you start having trust into the teams, and all the teams are doing a great job. So finally, everyone is kind of having the trust of the capabilities of all the other teams, and you reduce the double work, and finally you have much quicker and better way to achieve your overall objective. So, but this concept is very new, it's very radical for most of the companies, and we see now the transition from the traditional command structure over Agile into the team of team approach. And maybe you can also set a little bit for yourself where you're standing with your organization, also reflect a little bit what is really needed to come into a team of teams approach for your organization. So when it comes to the toolbox in design thinking, there are different kind of tools we can apply. There are probably 250 tools I can state here, but usually we have like tools related to the design principles, so how to define the design principles, persona concepts, asking 5x why, future journeys, shadowing to observe for someone, creating kind of brainstormings related to benchmarks, and until you're coming up to like prototypes and like clickable solutions you look into. At the same time, there are many kind of canvas models out there you can use. And we created now 50 design thinking templates. And this was actually before the shutdown and lockdowns have started, and everyone was still operating mostly in the physical space, because we were using these templates to print them out in 8.0, to work on it and have the sticky notes on top. Now with the lockdown, everything is online, we use these PDF templates just in the online boards. And that was also quite nice because we were ready to go. So for us, it was like quite nice having collaboration digitally happening immediately, because all the tools we used in the physical space were already digital, and we just had to copy and paste them in any kind of online boards, and we started to collaborate, and everyone did know already kind of the structure and the sequence, what to do, because we have a nice numbering on these templates. And this really helps them to create kind of a nice experience into the project while we're doing a kind of virtual digital design thinking session. So basically, these are the tools, and what usually happens, you have kind of a gallery of methods you can use. So, and then you select the tool, you have a description, and out of this knowledge base of tools, you have to really learn how to select the right tools. And this is probably one of the toughest things to learn, you know, kind of the feeling which tool should I apply at which time, because it's not kind of a straightforward process. And you say in the beginning, you do the persona concepts and we ask 5 times why, and then basically come up with a nice point of view. Usually, you know, it's always different. And this is also something, this comes out of experience. So if you do a lot of design thinking workshops, you facilitate a lot of design thinking sessions, you get a good feeling about what kind of methodology, what kind of tools, what kind of methods should you use for the next iteration, you know, to come up with good projects. And this is also kind of the bad parts about having design thinking in large organizations. And I observed it many times. Basically what's happening, people go on a 2 days design thinking training, they learn 20 tools, and they come back to the teams and say, look, I learned 20 tools, we applied it in sequence 1, 2, 3, and now we do it for all projects. And this is basically the worst thing can happen to any organization, because this destroys the entire design thinking mindset. And finally, you have like all these projects with personas and all these projects using 5 times whys, you know, and no one's asking, this is really the appropriate tool for what I like to achieve. And we have the same thing a little bit with Agile, you know, everything is Agile nowadays, but I can tell you there are so many projects that would be better off using kind of a waterfall approach to come up with a solid solution, because, you know, people not questioning, you know, is really Agile the right methodology for what I like to achieve. And the same comes to design thinking, you know, design thinking is great, observing the problem, they're nice tools, but you have to know and have to have a feeling about, you know, which tool should I apply in which situation to come up with a good solution. So that's just a side remark about the tools. So when we go on now, I mentioned already, how does it look like? So in the physical space, pictures from our ecosystem design workshops here in Zurich. It's a nice space at Memox. They rent out these spaces, and basically we split into groups. We have all these post-its. We collaborate, we draw personas, and we really trying to come up with like final prototypes in a short period of time. And then now switching into the digital space, it's also possible. So you have basically the same setting with the online boards, but the toughest part is really to make it tangible, because usually we're ending up then in drawing wireframes and this kind of, oh, we have an app here, mock-up, but this kind of building something, you know, and having something, a simple function, you know, a simple kind of experience we like to show to people, you know, it's not happening in the digital space. And so I really look forward that we have a time after the lockdowns that we come together, and maybe in the future it will be hybrid. So we have sessions, there will be digital, there will be online collaboration, but there will be also physical meetings. And when it comes to building something, having it tangible, interacting with the customer, it must be somehow in the physical space, because otherwise, you know, we will not get the same results and the same solution as we had before, just in the physical space. Tools, when it comes to like online boards, there's Miro, there's Klaxoon, you know, these are the standard online collaboration tools. And then basically you add voice, and so you can use a Zoom call or like MS Teams or whatever you have ready to go. So basically teams working with a login on the virtual board. At the same time, we have a telephone conference, you know, to broadcast kind of what are the next steps, what to do. And you can have also then breakout sessions that the team can work on the board at the same time. And these boards are really huge. You have like kilometers and kilometers of white space, you know, to put something together. And this works actually quite well. And now I have a lot of workshops also kind of with different parts of the world. So people collaborating on these online boards in Russia, Romania, Australia at the same time. And sometimes, of course, you have latency problems, but usually it works very smoothly. So I like to sum up a little bit from my presentation about design thinking. And I think what you should remember, you know, about the why design thinking, there's first of all the value creation. So finding the right problem in design thinking is really the part while we defining a design thinking challenge and while we're going into design thinking process. Then, of course, everything related to value capture, kind of the efficiency movement with lean and everything, you know, and building something is related to Agile, you know, and classic lean is really kind of, you know, you like to bring it to the market. And for the how, this was also the last question. It's really important to have the appropriate mindset, to apply these things. So basically, living up the mindset is important. And then there's always a question, how we change now this mindset, And actually, it's very simple, You as a leader or project manager, you have to live it up on a daily basis. That's the only way that people really get into it. So walk the talk, basically doing it every time. And this could be something really small in the beginning. So one exercise, for example, is how you give feedback to everyone. There's one concept in design thinking called I like, I wish. So you see already kind of from the tone, I like is something you really like as a positive feedback, but the negative feedback, something you don't like, you phrase in a different way. You say, I wish. And with the I wish kind of start of the answer or the feedback, you really kind of have a positive atmosphere in the room. And if everyone's doing it, kind of a feedback from a presentation, from presenting a final solution, a prototype, a first function, you get really good feedback. At the same time, you have still this kind of positive mindset that you build on the ideas of everyone else and make it better, and not coming up and say, oh my goodness, you presented now the third time, it's really a shitty idea. This will destroy everything, And just this first tool already kind of gives you a different kind of way of engaging with the people and also defining a mindset. And there's many other things you can do on a daily basis, and knowing the design thinking mindset and living it up is probably the best way of creating kind of this new culture. Also kind of what's interesting, Tim was showing the book about design thinking live, and now what I do with large organization as well, I'm not just saying, the leadership team have to live it up. I give the design thinking live playbook to every team member and saying, start to use design thinking for your personal life. And after you understand the concept and you improved your personal life, and finding better solutions, bring it to your team, use the same methodology, the same mindset, scale it over different teams within the organization, and building also kind of bottom up the same approach, with a mindset of finding the appropriate problem and also finding good solution while using the design thinking methodology. So there's a couple of ways of going into these things and coming along. So basically, my last 5 arguments why design thinking. And the first one is very obvious, I think you can, of course, have kind of a really rational mindset and say, these are the milestones, these are the metrics, these are kinds of KPIs to run a project. But, there's also kind of feelings, intuition, building up empathy with the final user customer is quite important also. Same importance as just doing it on a kind of rational analytical level. Second part, traditionally large organizations are usually made up by business people and tech people, and they like to do the technology approach. And I have seen it many times with like blockchain over the last 7-6 years, blockchain hammer, you have to do everything over the blockchain, a distributed ledger, but this is not the way to come up with good solution. But finally, you first have to have the customer needs, you have to build up the ecosystem. And if you need a good technology to have a decentralized ecosystem, of course, blockchain can help, but, always start with the customer needs and not just use technology as a hammer, to create innovation. So third part is about the teams approach, have team members with different kind of thinking preferences, involve like the right people, the right stakeholders in this process to come up with good solution, but more important also to find the right problem. And then, of course, the fourth point, is user-centered. Everything is user-centered. So there's a great toolkit and tools out there you can use, but it's not only kind of the needs from the people, it's also kind of the feasibility. So you have to build something that's feasible. At the same time, you need kind of the business success behind, in the end of the day, whatever we create, we like to get money, we like to make money out of it, because otherwise we have no money to fill into our innovation process and to build up these budgets. And finally, the last point is really, I think every company really should look first into the pain points, the jobs to be done of the user, even the internal kind of stakeholders and users to create something. And this basically does two things. You come up with better solutions, and when you do it internally for internal workforce, they're probably much more efficient, and they will enjoy probably much more what they do on a daily basis. So, right, thank you, Tim. You're already back here to maybe interrupt you and have a couple of questions about my presentation. So
Wow.
thank you very much for listening in.
Thank you so much. Wow, wonderful. This is, so the last slide there, of course, Michael has been kind enough to offer a discount at the website dt-toolbook.com for the templates, a 50% discount for the tools and the templates. So please, we'll be showing this again at the end of today. But please take him up on that offer. Michael, this is truly an amazing, it's like drinking from a fire hose, as we say, yeah? So much information. So there are some questions here. And let me just see, John Atkinson, let me start with you. Thank you, Michael. What are the knowledge, skills, and abilities needed by individuals to succeed in the area of managing innovation projects?
Yeah, that's a quite good question. And from my own experience as kind of trying out things, fail, learn out of your failure and reflect on these behaviors and then do it next time differently. So I was for a long time Chief Innovation Officer at Swisscom, at national telecommunication provider with a strong emphasis on IT. And basically, we were building up all these new verticals about smart cities, smart mobility. We were looking into building clusters around healthcare. And, it's a new industry and you're trying to apply new technology. And a lot of assumptions we had in the beginning were totally wrong. So we had like kind of the idea, to bring like SIM cards and all these parking spots and tracking all the traffic and everything. And basically there was no need, there's no kind of city buying our solution. At the same time, there was no need from the customers driving around about these things. So basically, you have all these assumptions, and basically, yes, test them first early with design thinking, find out about the real needs,
Yeah.
around your stakeholders and customers, and then basically build something up, iterate, and come up with better solutions. And this is just, kind of practicing, the behavior.
Yeah, to me, what you're speaking of talks a little bit about adaptive leadership and adaptive project management, where we are, there are cycles that are faster and cycles that are maybe more prolonged. And our job is to use the skills that we have, but to be able to adapt those to those environments. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So another question, what are the differences between radical collaboration you mentioned and usual collaboration within a team?
Yeah, usually what I know quite nice setting from large organization. So you plan a meeting, like a kickoff meeting for a project. So first meeting, you invite 25 participants. First meeting, everyone is showing up, you present what is the goal of the project and you have a couple of tasks, and then basically you invite for the second meeting and half of the people are gone because there was work to do. First of all, and second of all, this was not so interesting this project. And finally, you're ending up with like 4 people after the third meeting really working on this project. So you're losing, first of all, a lot of time in the beginning, and then there's a lot of planning because, now when do we meet? What kind of capabilities we need? Do we need kind of external kind of suppliers to start with? And with radical collaboration, we come together for 1 week sprint. We're all together for 5 days in one room. And in the end of the 5 days, we have to deliver a result. So there's some outcomes, and basically no one is leaving the room for the 5 days. So you stay with the team, you stay with the capabilities, and you have to deliver at the end of the day. And what I do on the last day, I invite top management and they come to the final presentation. And there's a lot of things happening the night before and in the morning to present something tangible. Trust me.
Very good. So do we have time for one more very fast one? So comes from Lucas. Lucas, thank you. What is the intersection between design thinking and systems thinking? Is design thinking qualitative or quantitative method?
Basically, yeah, what we do. So system thinking is really trying to break down the system in smaller pieces. So if you like to build like a space rocket, you're trying to look into the system of your engine, you're looking into kind of the fire shield, you look into all these sub-components. And basically what system thinking does, you break down the machine in subsystems, you innovate and you build something in the subsystem, and then you're building up the entire rocket. So basically, speaking in pictures, and in design thinking, basically you observing the user behavior, so you're looking into kind of what is the need. So why we like to land on the moon, what will be kind of the benefit for society, and many other things. And the problem is when you just apply system thinking, then never have any customer. There's no human being, and basically if you're talking to people in systems engineering, great people, they build great stuff, but they never engage with the user. And what we're doing now when it comes to like complex system like ecosystems, you cannot just create an ecosystem with different technology platforms out of the blue and say, no, on the technically speaking, all these APIs working together, and at the end of the day, the customer gets a nice product. If you're not involving kind of the customer and user before and ask, do you really like to have such a solution in the end? So that's the reason why design thinking and system thinking comes nicely together in the design of ecosystem, because you need the customer needs, you need also the needs and the behaviors of each actors in the system, because behind every company you have decision makers and they have needs. It's not kind of a rational approach combining things and bringing them to the market. At the same time, you have an underlying system, could be an IT system, could be kind of value streams connected, and both things together really bring real innovation. And if you separate them, it's nice, you have outcomes, but you get the better solutions by combining them. And this is what I do now for almost 1 decade, combining different mindsets, because it's much stronger if you're not being single-minded, if you combine it, and then you really have to decide over the process while you're creating something, what is the appropriate mindset for what I like to achieve at the moment. And a good example is really kind of system thinking and design thinking. Another thing I did, and just my last sentence about this, is combining big data analytics and design thinking. So basically data has a lot of insights and we can use it in all kinds of parts of the design thinking process, for observing, for prediction, for testing. So the data component is really quite nice. And sometimes you have also kind of these people saying, oh, design thinking, you interview like 20 people, and then you're building results, it's not enough people you involve into this process. And with the idea of combining both, you get like large data, for insights, and also kind of these qualitative interviews, interaction with people, and the combination gives you also much better results. It's also much more complex running the project with both kind of entities, but in the end of the day, it's much better validated, and you get also most of the times better results than just using big data analytics or just using design thinking.